So, look, this is as positive a day as we could possibly hope for, given where we were on Tuesday, marking the second anniversary of that horrific attack by Hamas on your country, which left 1,200 dead and 251 hostages. There now seems to be real hope that those hostages could be home, the ones who are still alive, or their bodies back to be buried with dignity by Monday. What's your reaction to this?
The Israelis are breathing a huge sigh of relief that those hostages who were snatched from their beds, snatched from a music festival, ripped away from their families, may finally be coming home after 2 years of being trapped in tunnels under Gaza, chained, cuffed, starved, tortured, abused. They're coming home. This is an incredible breakthrough. Until now, Hamas was holding the hostages as bargaining chips, as leverage to survive the war that they started on October 7th so that they could do it again and again. And President Trump really pulled his weight here and forced Hamas to free the hostages before the end of the war, while the IDF is still in Gaza. And the next stage is going to be negotiating an end of the war that disarms Hamas, demilitarizes Gaza, and de-radicalizes the population. This is a very good day.
I mean, that's a long way in the future, though. And you make the point that Hamas has used the hostages as bargaining chips. They know they had hostages before. They've been able to exchange, one hostage, a soldier for 1,000 plus prisoners held in Israeli jails, including, terrorists and murderers. Why would they be so willing to give up the hostages, which are their pretty much only bargaining chip? Why have they done it now? Because lots of people are saying, I mean, the idiots, frankly, the useful idiots are saying, oh, well, Netanyahu could have agreed this deal long before now. But the point is, this wasn't on the table. And of course, Hamas could have given the hostages back any day they wanted, or here's a mad idea, they could have not taken them in the first place. So why now? What's changed?
Well, the genius of the Trump plan is it is the first plan that separates the ransom for the hostages from the plan to end the war. Until now, Hamas was demanding it keep the hostages until the war is over. It even wanted to hold on to the bodies to guarantee that it could begin reconstruction. That means rebuilding its tunnels while still holding on to the hostages' bodies. President Trump has now said, no, 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 no. All of the hostages come out first. You're not allowed to keep them, and then we'll negotiate an end of the war. And I think this is happening because of a combination of factors. One, unrelenting Israeli military pressure that has pushed Hamas's leaders back against the wall, at least the surviving leaders, because Israel killed most of the leaders in the Gaza Strip, and American diplomatic pressure that brought Hamas's backers, the countries supporting it, to tell it, game's up. Hamas is now more diplomatically isolated than ever before. Its biggest supporters, Julia, are people on the streets of London right now, and New York and other cities in the West. But internationally, the whole world has rallied against Hamas because of that American leadership to tell it, you have to free the hostages now, and then you're going to have to disarm. It has no supporters who still wanted to govern Gaza the day after the war.
It is fascinating to see, we've spoken about it on the show earlier, the reaction on many of the mainstream broadcasters here in the UK, including the BBC, ITV and Sky.
Are they in mourning?
Well, that's the thing. You'd think people would be more jubilant, more happy. And again, all the supposedly pro-Palestinian people who desperately care about babies in Gaza. I'm waiting for all their celebratory messages on X, but none seem to be forthcoming. But there seems to be a very sort of grudging response to this deal. And I know that if Obama had agreed this deal, got to this far, if President Biden had done it, they would be whooping and praising, the ground they walked on for their diplomatic brilliance. Donald Trump, whatever his motives, does he want a peace prize? Does he just want people to talk about him? I really don't care. As someone said yesterday, you can give him the Nobel Peace Prize, you can give him the prize for physics. If he can do this deal, who cares? But it is fascinating how many people don't like this deal because it's Donald Trump's deal.
Yeah, given the prize for physics, he's really defied gravity here. But, Julia, it's got nothing to do. The reason that the pro-Palestinian movement is not happy about this deal has nothing to do with Donald Trump, and they wouldn't have reacted differently if it were President Obama. This is the fact. The October 7th massacre triggered celebrations on the streets of the West. The movement marching through London, calling for intifada, calling from the river to the sea, is not a peace movement. It's a pro-war movement. They just want Hamas to win that war because they share the goal of the destruction of Israel, because they glorify its terrorism, because they see Hamas as freedom fighters who are fighting a noble resistance. That's the truth. That's why they're glum about this agreement. You know who's happy? Israelis are happy that the hostages are coming home and the war may be about to end. Yeah. You know who's happy? Palestinians in Gaza whose lives have been hell for the last 2 years. You know who's really upset? The radical cosplaying protesters on the streets of London who have no skin in the game, yeah, but are using this as an outlet to express their rage at the West and at Jews and are baying for blood. They're not happy that the war is over. Well, I say, screw them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a fascinating thing, though, is, you know, they claim all these marches, you said, first one organised while people were still being, you know, raped and murdered and burnt alive with their children in the kibbutz. I mean, it's just extraordinary. On the day, on October the 7th, 2023, oh, could we have a march for Gaza? I mean, before an IDF soldier had even, you know, been called in to start tackling this war on their border. But they claim they're pro-Palestine. They're not. They are anti-Israel, anti-Jew. But they are also, and you touched on that in your answer, anti-West, aren't they? This is a movement that is not just globalising the Intifada. It's kind of globalising hatred of the West and of Western civilization and Western values. And ironically, those values and freedoms in our democracies that give them the ability and the right to protest on our streets, I'd say going further than the law actually allows in terms of their hatred and vile claims and the intimidation of people. But they don't understand that what they're calling for is the end of something that gives them the freedoms to even call for its end.
Oh, no, I think they understand that. These lunatic lefty protesters not only hate the West, they hate humanity, they hate decency. They have openly taken the side of a terrorist army that perpetrated the most barbaric and sadistic atrocities and the worst terror attack of the 21st century because they share its goal, because they want the destruction of the state of Israel, because they're animated by the same ancient hatred of Jews, and because they hate the West as well. They hate Britain. You know, Julia, if you go to any of the pro-Israel marches in London, you will see they are extremely peaceful and civil, and people are flying Israeli flags, British flags, Iranian dissident flags as well. You go to the pro-Palestinian protests and what do you see? Palestinian flags and Irish flags. And I think that explains the whole difference.
But also, you know, you don't have people spouting abuse. And by the way, people aren't wearing masks to hide their identity as well. Let's talk about what happens next. OK, let's just keep everything crossed. And I'm hoping, I mean, you and I will have both spoken to so many of the hostage families and it's just heartbreaking. And you know, this week, you know, to have spoken on the day of October the 7th to the mother of one of the hostages. They don't even know whether he's alive or dead. And I mean, you know, he was taken at 18. You know, my daughter's 18. The idea I wouldn't know for 2 years whether she was starved and tortured in a tunnel underground or whether she was in a coffin. But on Monday, she will hopefully find out and it will be good news. I mean, we just have to pray for these people. But let's say all that happens. What does happen next? Because peace talks, peace deals, moving forward, it all relies on Hamas being a trustworthy organisation. They're a brutal terrorist organisation that wants you dead, me dead, and the whole of Israel to not exist, to be pushed into the sea. So how can you have a negotiation with these people?
Exactly. Hamas does not want to end this war. It hasn't given up its goal of destroying Israel. It hasn't given up its goal of taking over the Palestinian Authority and waging war against Israel until it is destroyed. What we have now is a ransom deal for the hostages and a process to get to a ceasefire. So here's what happens now. Today, the Israeli government will meet to formally approve the deal. We expect that the hostages will be out on Sunday, maybe Monday. And then negotiations will take place on how to end the war. And President Trump's 20-point plan makes clear Hamas has to decommission its weapons. Its remaining tunnels have to be destroyed. Its leaders are welcome to go into exile if they want. Gaza must be de-radicalized. And Israel's withdrawal from the rest of the Gaza Strip will be in accordance with the demilitarization of Gaza. No one is expecting Israel to pull back completely to the border while Hamas is still running around with rockets and tunnels. So I know lots of people, including President Trump himself, are speaking triumphantly of a peace plan. Let's temper our enthusiasm. There still needs to be global pressure on Hamas through its state sponsors, its patrons, Qatar, Turkey,
maybe
Egypt,
not granting recognition of a Palestinian state before this point. Perhaps maybe that might not have helped. But here's the thing. Hamas aren't going to give up their weapons. They might pretend to. They might kind of slink away into the darkness and just carry on mafia style, running things quiet behind the scenes. But there isn't an alternative. There isn't, I would say, there isn't a Lib Dem coalition option. There are no moderate leaders either in the Palestinian Authority currently run by Fatah or in Gaza. They're not there. They don't exist. So who is going to be doing this?
The responsibility is now on Hamas and Hamas alone to end the brutal war that it started 2 years ago. And if Hamas now turns around and says, no way, we're not giving up our weapons, we won't let our tunnels be destroyed, then Israel just isn't going to withdraw from the rest of the Gaza Strip.
And would they still have the backing of Donald Trump? Donald Trump said very clearly in press conference last week, look, if you've got to give up the hostages, and if you don't, then basically he said, Israel can do what they want, all hell will be unleashed, they have carte blanche. It's all very well saying that. Is Donald Trump going to back Israel on that? And can Israel withstand yet more of the outrageous opprobrium they're getting from the West for fighting a completely just war against terrorists on their border?
I think President Trump really wants peace and he wants to end the conflict. The priority is getting the hostages out. And then the question is, what do you do with the remainder of Hamas territory beyond the line where Israel has withdrawn? And I think the most likely scenario is that Israel basically holds onto that territory until Hamas is willing to give back its weapons. We probably won't go into an all-out war to drive out Hamas, but Hamas is on the back foot. Hamas is internationally isolated. And here's the key point. World leaders need to think, how are they incentivizing Hamas? Are they empowering it? Are they encouraging it to give up power? Or are they encouraging it to dig in its heels? And Julia, it's no coincidence that no Europeans were involved in the making of this deal. They were irrelevant. They didn't help get to this deal. If anything, they sabotaged those ceasefire talks by empowering Hamas at a critical time with that nonsensical recognition of a non-existent Palestinian state.
It's going to be a absolutely, a hedge of your seat few days to see what happens in the coming days. Ilon Levy, always a good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.